Welcome to the Alaskaland podcast, stories from the Fairbanks North Star boroughs past, present, and future, with your host, Mayor Bryce Ward. Each episode, we'll sit down with Fairbanks' most interesting characters for a fascinating conversation about where we've been and where we're going. And now, Mayor Ward.
Hello, everyone. It's the Alaskaland podcast, and we are here today to talk past, present, and future of the Fairbanks North Star borough, all things Fairbanks. And today we've got a guest with us. We've got Mr. Randy Zarnke, and Randy is pretty much, I guess when I think about you, Randy, I think hockey. That's how I first met you, was involved in the hockey program. And maybe, Randy, let's talk a little bit about who you are and introduce yourself to our guest.
So I came up to Fairbanks in 1978. I worked for the Department of Fish and Game for 20-odd years, retired a while back. Hockey has always been a very important thing in my life, although I didn't get to play until I came up here as an adult. And once I had the opportunity, I dived in with both skates, so to speak, and really have never gotten over it. Just love the game and enjoy playing, enjoy working in the background as well.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about history of hockey in Fairbanks. It sounds like you kind of dived in deep on understanding some of the history, and let's talk about some of the particular games or aspects of hockey. Okay.
So years ago, I was a volunteer up at the Alaska Film Archives up at the university campus, and I found that they had a bunch of old footage of hockey back starting about the 1920s and then running through the 1950s. So I put all that together, and it was just fascinating to me. We're sitting in borough headquarters right now, and we could look out the window behind me and see where the first rinks were made here in Fairbanks. And they weren't very fancy by our standards today, but the people sure had a good time with it. And to watch the evolution through those videos of, by the 50s, there were matching uniforms and there were dasher boards with businesses, the banks and the auto dealers were all advertising there, and kind of the way we think of it today. So that video history is really fascinating, and it's available through the film archives up at the university. We were talking before we turned the mics on. I wrote a book about hockey here in Fairbanks. It's called Fairbanks Hockey Pioneers. And it just started as a couple of articles that I wrote about people that I thought that had made major contributions to the development of hockey here in town. And I just handed out copies to some friends at the Ice Dogs game, and they really liked them. So I wrote a couple more and then a couple more. And it dawned on me that with just a little bit more effort, we could turn it into a book. So I did that, and then went around town and got some donations so that we could get it printed, and then gave it to the youth hockey organization to use as a fundraiser. And the book is it has a section about coaches, it has a section about players, it has a section about administrators and Zamboni drivers and skate room attendants, and just a little bit of everything. So it's really kind of considered out of date already because it's almost 20 years old, and you know how fast things pass. In life, that a lot of the people there don't live here anymore, or people don't recognize the names the way they did when it first came out.
20 years ago wasn't that long ago. I'm there with you.
I agree, but time flies. I remember one of the really well-known coaches here in town is Roger McKinnon. He used to own Sport King, and shortly after the book came out, he took his team for a tournament outside, and when they got back, I was talking to him, and he said, I think you're really onto something with this book. I said, why do you say that? He said, well, when we flew back from the tournament, I think every player on a team was reading this, and these guys don't read anything. So he says, I think you've finally hit something that's really of interest to the younger generation.
That's great. So it's not in production anymore.
That's correct. I mean, if people want to hunt me down, I can find them one, out in the shed somewhere. But if you want to find me, you can contact me via email. It's itrap2, ITRAP, number 2 at gci.net, and I'll find you a copy.
All right. So you'll find a copy. And you go into more detail. You said you got kind of details on players, on referees. You talk a little bit about like the history aspect too, right? Of you'd mentioned from the banks of the Chena River to the more sophisticated rinks that we have nowadays.
Well, that was more when I was referring to the videos, but it's certainly in the book too. Probably one of my favorite chapters in the book is about the Big Dipper. And as you probably know, that building started as an aircraft hangar during World War II down in the village of Tanacross. And Hez Ray, who was a recreational specialist here in town, drove by, saw it, and, the light must have gone on that I could turn this into a sports facility. And he commissioned a bunch of people from here in town, mostly high school students who volunteered because they could get out of school for a week, including Supreme Court Justice Daniel Winfrey, who grew up in town. And they went down to Tanacross, and little by little, they took that building apart. A lot of the military structures are kind of like Tinker Toys that they, you can put them together and take them apart and move them somewhere and put them back together. And that's what they did. Brought it back here to Fairbanks, put it up, and then it just stood as an empty shell for a long time. And then in preparation for the Arctic Winter Games in Fairbanks in 1982, they decided that they would remodel it into a more modern facility. And so got some money out of Juneau that they couldn't get money for a new construction, but there was money available for remodeling. And so they took off all the outside and put a new outside on. They took out everything inside and put a new inside. They didn't build a new building, mind you. They remodeled. And it turned into this beautiful building that, one of the things that I always point to that to me talks to the success of that project was that here we are now 40 years later, and other than a few coats of paint and a lot of mopping and cleaning and that sort of thing, it's still the same building that was built in 1982. I mean, there haven't been any major remodeling projects. It was that they did that good of a job of scoping out what was necessary that it's 40 years later, it's still the most popular rink in town.
It is, and it's hopping. If you've ever been over there on an Ice Dogs night.
And the other thing, I remember hearing some usage figures many, many years ago talking about the people that walk there during the day. Mm-hmm. If you ever have any doubts, well, not you personally, but if any of your listeners have any doubts about how much it gets used, just go over there some morning and start counting noses on how many people walk in that building for their daily exercise. It gets a lot of use.
So I made the mistake of going the wrong way once. I had a meeting in one of the back conference rooms, and I came up the stairs and didn't turn right to go with traffic. I turned left, I think, or I turned left. I should have gone right. And I got, it was like a head-on collision ready to happen with all the moms and strollers with their kids and folks walking. It was great. Yeah. I learned my lesson, though.
You learned your lesson. That's right.
So, yeah, I love the story of the Big Dipper. It's so Fairbanks. It's the best way to put it.
What was interesting for me when I wrote that story, it started out about half as long as what's in the book. And I would give it to somebody who had lived through that era, and they'd come back and say, "Oh, it's a great story, but I got to tell you this." And they would tell some additional. Well, I'd put that in. Then I'd give it to somebody else. And they'd say, "Oh, I've got to tell you this story," and it just grew and grew and grew because everybody had their favorite memories. Even back when it was nothing more than a shell, the community loved it.
And it's really neat because one of the projects we're talking about for the future is an expanded center that really does a lot of different needs, and that the Big Dipper is a cornerstone in that. And so that history that ties back to how was Fairbanksans high school students came together and took it apart and put it back together again. I think that's so great.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more.
So I guess when we talk about hockey in Fairbanks, there's a couple other really big programs. Right now, one of the youth programs that we have is the Ice Dogs. And we're home with the Ice Dogs and super happy to have that happening at the Dipper and have a community that supports that organization. But before the Ice Dogs, there was another. Do you maybe want to talk about the Gold Kings?
Have we got a couple days? So, back in 1975, the city fathers, and I mean leaders in the business community as well as the political realm, they wanted to have a senior men's hockey team that could play against Anchorage and Seattle and whoever else they could find. And so at the time, the construction of the pipeline was going strong, and Gary Atwood was the business agent for the Teamsters. And so he had the ability to attract these young men that were extremely good hockey players by offering them a job on the pipeline that would be, paying 3, 4, 5 times whatever they might make wherever they were living now. And so they started out as the Teamsters, and a couple of years later, they morphed into the Gold Kings. And between 1975 and 1995, a 20-year span, they won 5 national titles and brought just a ton of notoriety, good notoriety to the community. Hosted 16 national teams from around the world, the likes of Sweden, Norway, France, Belgium, Japan, China, etc. And it was, for me, you can probably tell from the excitement in my voice, I mean, it was a magical time. And these guys were just really great players. There was this connection between the team and the town, between the players and the fans that I've never seen anything like it. It was just very strong. We're in the process now, the very final stages of making a movie about the Gold Kings, which will be shown in about 10 days from now. And it's my hope that the whole community will take pride in what we're trying to convey, and that you'll want to have a copy on your computer that you can share with visitors and that sort of thing. I hope it's going to be that good. But then the business world caught up to the Gold Kings. They had to change, and they couldn't survive here any longer, and they moved. And we were all, those of us that were big fans, were wondering what would happen. And a small group put together the Ice Dogs, and they hired one of the Gold Kings as a coach, a guy by the name of Rob Proffitt. And Rob had been a real, let's say he stirred the pot when he played and, got other people excited. And so he didn't seem like, at the time, the best coach, a choice for a coach, but he turned out to be an excellent choice. And they've now been here for 25 years, and they too, I can't remember the number, but I think they've won 3 national titles. So we have that history of excellence in the hockey world, and we're known around the world for that.
Yeah, it's a great story, and anyone that knows Rob now and knew Rob then, that was before my time, I'll say.
The Rob that you know now is very mellow compared to the guy that first came up.
Well, I'm sure that that vigor and tenacity is what has made the Ice Dogs such a staple in Fairbanks.
I agree. Yep.
So is there anything else that any takeaways from your time and as a player, as an observer that you would want to leave with folks as far as the hockey community? Yeah,
one thing I'd like to mention is back about 16 years ago, we started an event that the first year we called Hockey Day in Fairbanks. And it really wasn't all that much, but I could tell there was a ton of interest. And so the next year we changed it to Hockey Week in Fairbanks. And we're now, as I say, in 16th year. And in a 10-day period, we put on about 25 different activities for the community, all the way from a reading program in the elementary schools to 3-on-3 tournaments on outdoor ice, to an open-air skating event down at Tanana Lakes. A couple of years ago, we added a major fireworks display. So it's a real conglomeration of everything related to hockey, and the community really responds. People enjoy it, and that's what keeps me motivated. I mean, people walk up to me in the middle of summer and say, well, what are you going to do for Hockey Week next year? And we've had the Stanley Cup here in town, the epitome of hockey excellence, and we've had a few other celebrities come, and it's just been a very rewarding run for me.
That's great. And I have my pin. I think it's on my coat at the house right now. But
I'll trust you.
And that is, I think this year in particular, aren't we hosting the women's games?
Actually, this is going to be a little bit after Hockey Week is over, but in early March, Fairbanks will be hosting the Pacific District Girls and Women's Championships. This is the second time that I'm aware of. I remember the first time they were here, and it was really exciting. I was unsure what to expect that first time, and when you go and see some of these really high talent level skaters, I mean, you change your attitude of what women's hockey is about. It's not powder puff, believe me. They can outskate, outshoot, most of the boys that of the same age group. Really top-notch talent.
That's awesome. That's going to be here in Fairbanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, I guess is there, you've written a book, you've lived it, you've played the game. Anything, if there's a young person that wants to be involved in hockey, what options are available for them in the community right now?
Well, the major youth hockey organization in town is called Hockey Club Fairbanks, and it's a group that started, I'm going to say, about 5 years ago. And they have grown to prominence and recognition on the national level in the sense of they're doing everything that the national governing body advocates, and they're now considered a model organization. And that just means that you're teaching kids the right way and you're not overdoing it, and just a whole variety of things like that. And so Hockey Club Fairbanks, you can find them, I'm sure, on Facebook or wherever else on social media, and that would probably be the best place to start.
All right. And are they associated with the schools too? The school programs are separate?
They're separate.
Separate programs, okay.
And I guess for the young boy or girl that's thinking about starting, go for it. I mean, it's just a wonderful sport. You'll get so much positive feedback from it. I don't know if we have time, but in the book there's one teacher that I interviewed who said, I can tell the kids in my class who are comp hockey players before they tell me. And I said, well, all right, how is that? And she said, they understand authority. Somebody's in charge. On the ice, it's your coach. In the classroom, it's your teacher, obviously. They understand discipline. If you don't do what the coach tells you, you won't play. If you mess up in the classroom, there are consequences there. And they understand time management. In other words, for a hockey player, he's going to have to get his homework done, get chores done, whatever they might be, go to practice, get enough sleep, all of that. And I thought to myself, I've always been an advocate for sports, but I thought, what parent wouldn't want their kids to understand authority, discipline, and time management? So, and the thing about it is kids that play basketball like basketball, kids that play baseball like baseball, kids that play hockey just love hockey. And if it can teach you all those good lessons, what could be better?
Right. And we got plenty of ice.
Yep.
So at least in the wintertime.
We have a whole river of it.
A whole river. Well, Randy, I really appreciate you spending some time to talk about hockey in Fairbanks and share a little bit of your story and share your book too. And so if anyone's interested, give Randy a call and see if we can get you hooked up with the book. So
very good.
Do you have any final thoughts or comments for anyone?
When I was in graduate school, I was at the University of Wisconsin, and our coach for the college was a very famous guy by the name of Badger Bob Johnson, and he had a very famous saying, and that is, "It's a great day for hockey." And he said that 365 days a year. So I'll end with that. It's a great day for hockey.
All right. Well, you heard it from Randy. So thanks everyone for tuning into the podcast, and appreciate you listening.
Fairbanks, oh Fairbanks. Thanks for listening to the Alaskaland podcast. We hope you found today's conversation enlightening. For more episodes, listen on your mobile device through your favorite podcast app or watch at youtube.com/Fairbanks North Star Borough.